So once we have our device running and backup again, so we can do a number of things with the backend API. So here are the details in the repository. So you can add a new device with the MAC address that you just copied from your device. The client installer will give you the MAC address which we just saw in the previous frames. So we can add a device, we can upgrade the OS, upgrade its operating system. We can push the update to one device by adding its MAC address, or we can even put the upgrade, the push the operating system upgrade to all the device by just putting all in the post request. The parameters devices. We can update the firmware. Firmware is something different from the client software though, so the firmware is your custom software which you can upload to your Raspberry Pi. You can again push the firmware to all devices or to some respective or some specific MAC addresses. So you can put any Python program which will run at the startup. So this object firmware will check whether the syntax is correct of the program, and then it automatically adds it to the startup sequence of the Raspberry Pi and runs it. You can list the number of devices that we have. So the simple responses that you can get from the backend are status and the message, and here are the list of status codes. So let's try that out. First of all, we do get list all devices using HTTP GET request. We'll just send it. So here are the number of devices that I have added for testing. Just add our new device. So the MAC address the installer gave us was this. We can just use this address. We can put its name here, and in operation we need to just put add. So all the details regarding device addition are mentioned here in the repository as well, which will be provided in the PDF file to you. So we will go ahead and try to edit. So it's already added, so it will just return 404 because it's already in the database for testing. You can add new devices, like if I change its MAC address to, let's say, so it will add the new device and give 201 which is created, while RPA-diff1 is already added. So you can just post request the upgrade, so it will upgrade the whole operating system. You can put all in the devices parameter to push the OS upgrade to all the devices, or you can even just put the MAC addresses of specific Raspberry Pi and it will push the upgrade sequence to operating system, upgrade operating system sequence to that specific Raspberry Pi. And here is the most important thing, which is upgrade. So as mentioned earlier, update is something which is separate from the client. So the client program is responsible for giving you the system information and the number of devices that we have in the system and things like that. So it's mostly telemetry data, while the update firmware, what it does is you can put any type of Python program here, and you can put the device to which you want to push that Python program, and in operation you just put update, and it will just put that new program, the Python program, to that specific RPA client of the device which has this MAC address. Once the program is being pushed, the RPA client will download it, and it will put that in the startup sequence of Raspberry Pi. So let's assume we have a program which is very simple Python program, says to run it, and it's like a simple test which says running test again now. So we'll just add that file here, and we will press send. So what it did is it just pushed this program to the Raspberry Pi client. Raspberry Pi client instantly downloaded that program and put that and after passing through the different checks so that the syntax of the Python program is not wrong, it added it to the startup sequence. So whenever you restart the Raspberry Pi first the RPA client will run, and then this your custom program will run. So you can put any type of Python program over here. So let's check that out whether it's working or not. I have simply SSH into my Raspberry Pi, and I will go to the RPA client folder, which is in the home directory, which is automatically installed and configured by the client installer. So I will go into the logs folder. So you can see that, okay, so in the RPA client directory we will list down all the files. So you can see that here is we have test firmware.py, and it is a test program, while the other one says firmware.py. So let's see the content of firmware.py. So it's running test again now, so it says this thing. And now we will go to the logs directory, and so we have the main program logs, so that we can check its health. We have our custom firmware logs, so we will go into firmware logs, and you can see it's saying running test because it was the old program. So let's send new program, some new program here. So let's change it to 123, save it, and then push it using Postman. So it's sent. So once we have sent the new firmware, we will go into this directory. We will check the contents of firmware. So you can see that it's instantly updated, and whenever Raspberry Pi, this specific Raspberry Pi will be restarted, it will send the files. It will run this program once, and actually it runs in another thread, so it will not halt anything at all. One other thing is we have an API endpoint, which is a GET request named list all. So it gives you a list of the system information of all the devices in the system. So call list all, and you can see that we have all the information, and each Raspberry Pi client gives real-time data with a frequency of 10 seconds. So you can see that temperature of CPU is 74.1, it's in Celsius. Then we have Linux, which is operating system, the user, which is root. Uptime is 13 minutes since we have started rebooted our Raspberry Pi. Bash version, memory being in use, and total memory, CPU usage, disk, total disk, and other related things. So total disk, and the user, which is being the user on which this specific RPA client is running. So it always updates the data after every 10 seconds. Let's check. So okay, so now 14 minutes has passed since the program is running. So that's it. That's how all the program works. While in case of the backend, which is already running on PM2, you can check that out. So it's already running, so you don't have to do anything at all. That's how all the program is working.